Evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Tonight, Alex is going to be talking about what should I buy and how do I decide. We don't have an image of the week this week, and now Adam is still out, unfortunately. So we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and turn it right over to Alex. Alex, go ahead.
Thank you very much, David, and welcome everybody. Coming back to the Astro Imaging channel. We always appreciate you coming in, and we hope that you're getting together to talk about a few things out on the internet. Look down here at the bottom of this page. You'll see http://testing.theastroimagingchannel.com. You go there, and you can type in. You check this little box down in the corner. This funny-looking thing down here in the lower right-hand corner, and you can add yourself to the conversation. We've already got, 15, 20 people, 10 speakers and 8 viewers over there. So come on in and start joining us. If you've got questions, type them in. I'm going to try to follow along. I've got 2 computers here, and I'll try to answer them if I can. But I'll be concentrating on the presentation, and David will be monitoring the questions. So volunteer your experiences with some of the things I've said and make wise comments and stuff like that. So, and before we get going, I do have a commercial. I think we all know Warren Keller. He's a friend of the Astro Imaging channel. He's also very good at Pix Insight. He should write a book. As a matter of fact, he's going to be out at Goat Mountain. That's our dark sky observing site out here in California. And if you ever wanted to spend a day with Warren, this is a chance to do it. For $50 on September 23rd, Woodland Hills will give you a lunch and dinner and the day with Warren. And since you're at GMARS, there are lots of pads to set your scopes up on, lots of electricity on the field. You can take pictures. Camping is free Friday and Saturday night. Camping's always free out there, so you're always welcome to come on out. And you get your all-day workshop with Warren. So to get there, you have to go to telescopes.net, the website for Woodland Hills. And they're sponsoring this and covering some of Warren's expenses and stuff like that. So I want to encourage everybody to take advantage of that if you're anywhere near or know how to fly in an airplane and can come on over. Today we're going to talk about what should I buy? And we're not going to talk about some things that might cover. I'm not going to give you a list of things to buy, but I'm going to dwell on how you decide what it is that you should be buying when you're out buying astro imaging equipment. And usually, of course, you want to know what the qualifications of the speakers are. Some of you who've been here for a while know that I don't have a lot of qualifications. I'm not a gearhead. I don't understand these guys that walk around and talk about how many teeth there are on a cog and all those other things that they talk about. I'm not a particularly precise person, and I think you need to be to really make wise decisions. I don't buy a lot of equipment because I'm a cheap fellow. So there's a lot of reasons I shouldn't be giving this presentation. On the other hand, in a sense, it's good that I do because of these very things. There's a lot of people that kind of fit that mold and don't have a lot of money to spend, and they might want to know from me, somebody who's not just in love with the equipment. I get asked a lot of questions, and I've had watched a lot of people trying to learn astro imaging. I can tell you about 2 individuals, one of whom walked into a nearby store near where I live and gave them $7,000 because he wanted to be an astro imager. He walked out, and 2 years later called me up and asked me if I could help him sell his stuff because he found out that astro imaging was a lot harder than he thought. And I said, yeah, I told him about Cloudy Nights and Astromart, and 6 months later, he called me up. He said he didn't like any of those options, and would I just buy it from him? And I said, no, I don't want to buy that stuff, and I wouldn't give you any money for it. And he says, how much would you give me for it? And I said, only a couple $1,000. He said, I'll take it. Another guy, $11,000 worth of stuff. No, he had $15,000 worth of stuff, and I priced it out I priced it out for him on Cloudy Nights with the taking off some for, and it was about 11,000 bucks worth when he finally gave up on the hobby, and he sold it to me for I think 6,000. Same kind of thing. I told him go over to Cloudy Nights, sell it over there. He didn't want to do that. I'm still using some of that stuff. In both cases, I'm still using some of that stuff. And I've sold it all for much more than that. That's because people don't ask the kinds of questions that I'm going to tell you about tonight. Okay? There's some important questions you need to know about. Questions that will not be answered tonight include all the things about a specific thing that you want to know about. You can go ahead and ask them over there. Type them into the chat over there on the astroimagingchannel.com. And people will talk about them. I can see that they're already talking about them, okay, over there. But we're not going to answer all these little questions because, A, I don't know the answers to all those little questions, and B, I would have to find out a lot more about you and what you plan to do with it. And nobody can do that. Nobody can advise you in 45 minutes. They just can't answer all those kinds of questions. You need to go a little bit slower than that. We're going to talk about two things, you and equipment. And the first thing we're going to talk about is you. You're going to have to know before you go buying astronomy equipment who your audience is, what your skill set is, what kind of pictures you want to take, where and how you're going to be taking them, how you're going to get the stuff, how you're going to get the equipment where it's supposed to be, what your personality is in general, what kind of a man or a woman or kid are you, and how do you deal with problems in life. We're going to have to know that stuff. Actually, we don't need to know it. You need to know it before you do it. And we're also going to need to know a little bit about your budget personality. We're going to need to know what kind of image. These are three horses. Took them all at one point or another in my career, and they all made me proud at one point or another. And none of them are perfect, but I had to ask myself, what level do I want to perform at? All these kinds of questions that we're going to be talking about. I've also wanted to know, would buying something enable me to take an even better picture? And that's one of the key questions that we have to ask. Remember, we're going to talk about two things, you and equipment. So to talk about you, there we go. Who are you taking pictures for? Are you like Eric here? Eric's one of us, and his face should be down at the bottom of your screen someplace. This is one of his APODs. He can take pictures for APOD people, and he's good. He's very good. I will never be there. Or do you want to take pictures for your fellow astroimagers? I can be there. I can show off my pictures now and then. I don't show off all my pictures, and I just don't do it. Or do you want to show off pictures for your family, scout troop, coworkers? People think you're really smart when you can take astro images. They really get impressed, particularly, and then we get down into the how. Like, I'm a really good iPhone astro imager. I mean, my pictures on my phone, they look really good. That's because they're really small and you can't see that the stars may be a little bloated, or they may not be quite as round as they should be and stuff like that. So if I'm just going to be displaying it on my iPhone, it's not going to cost me nearly as much, and I can make certain equipment purchasing decisions that aren't nearly as complicated. I can get by with a lot less if that's how I'm showing off my stuff. If I'm putting it on a computer monitor trying to fill the screen, then I'm going to have to do a little bit better with my purchasing and my execution. And if I'm starting to print it or enlarge it, putting out some big enlargements, I better have some really good stuff to support my efforts, and I better increase my skills dramatically. Originally, the level over here, when we were talking about your skill set, it said beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And that may not be the appropriate way to do it. Basic probably makes more sense than beginner, because there's an awful lot of people who are just starting out and within a few months are way into intermediate and moving into advanced. And there are other people who have who began years and years and years ago, and they're still just basic. So basic, intermediate, advanced probably makes more sense. What level are you, and what level do you intend to be in your time frame? What level are you right now? For instance, a basic imager probably needs a one-shot color, something like a DSLR. Okay, that's his camera, her camera. Probably a short focal length refractor is probably what they need, and they need some simple software, something like Nebulosity. With that setup, which can probably be had for a few $1,000s, and they probably have a big chunk of it right now. They could be doing pretty good basic work, and they could be very satisfied. And as long as they're not trying to enlarge it overly much or really, submit it for APODs, they're going to be okay. An advanced person, however, is probably going to be fully LRGB, a mono astro camera with a filter wheel, probably a very long focal length, or maybe a very wide angle, very high quality refractor. They're going to have acquisitions automation. They're going to have PixInsight and Photoshop. They're going to have lots of add-ons to do very special image processing. They're going to have a whole lot of things. They're probably going to have an observatory if they really wanted to get into the advanced level. Secondly, we got to talk a little bit about your mindset. Did you grow up with charts and graphs and numbers, and you're very comfortable in that world? You're happy with Linux and PixInsight? Or did you grow up a little more artistic? You go with overall impressions of things. You get gut feelings. I won't say touchy-feely, but you're more touchy-feely. Oh, I said it. You want the stuff that comes out of Stark Labs. Now, this is not a dichotomous world. It is quite possible that people are passing over back and forth. A guy like Warren Keller, who is most comfortable in the artistic world, he's an artist after all, has learned what he needs to know of the technical engineering stuff and is now fairly comfortable in the way PixInsight does things, even though it wasn't a natural form, but he picked it up. So keep that in mind. People who are in the technical engineering aspect of this might come at it from one approach, and the artistic people may come at it from a different approach. But figure out what your mindset is when you're buying equipment. There is, believe it or not, some equipment, and particularly software, that is particularly suited to one mindset rather than another. And then figure out your time frame. You want to get into it right now and do it, or you want to go into the future? You may have one set of requirements now, but you will have a different set of requirements in the future. Are you willing to spend more money later on, or do you want to get it all done right now? Ask yourselves about you. Ask yourself that kind of stuff. What kind of targets do you want to take pictures of? For most of these targets, you don't need to do much of anything except have a, oops, that needs to be down. You don't need to have much of anything but a tripod and a camera. Maybe a time release, maybe not. Okay, you can take most of these pictures with just about that. Solar system, however, solar pictures, you probably want to get into video-based system. And a video-based system takes hundreds of pictures in the space of 30, 40 seconds, and then you process them out so that you get the best of each image. Whereas a deep space picture will run for 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time, and then you take another one, and then you take a dozen of them, and you stack them all together. Some of these are just one-shot pictures, though. Okay, you just open them up and take them. I should say, it's just our way of doing things. We are deep space pretty picture people, and I'm not going to have a whole lot to share with you about nightscapes and solar system equipment, and frankly about pretty pictures or science. Some people like to do science with their telescope, and they don't need some of the things that we're going to be talking about. I once sold an 11-inch tube for the club to somebody, turns out that it was a science guy, and I was explaining how the tube could do this, that, the other thing, and it could be managed. He looked at me and says, "Oh, I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm going to be using it for science, and I don't need to worry about all that stuff." They have different set of requirements. He needed focal length, and that's what he was buying that 11-inch Celestron off me for. Okay, so decide what it is you want to take pictures of, because different pictures have different requirements. There's one thing that a lot of people never examine their conscience about. That's themselves, their location, where they are, who they are, what they can do. Whoops. How much time do you plan to spend imaging? It's not just how much time, but do you really want to make a $10,000 investment on something you're only going to get to do 2 or 3 times a year? Think about it. Maybe you need to do something else. How will you get your stuff to and from your imaging place? Questions like that, for some people, it's a no-brainer. You image in your backyard, and that's about all you ever do. You don't care about how much something weighs, how big it is, whether it'll fit in your car or anything else like that. Where are you going to store this stuff when it's not in use? Have you asked yourself that question? When you're considering the buying something, have you considered where it is you're going to store it? What kind of weather do you have? Are you blessed with like the people down in Southern California? You can put your scope out and put a cover over it and pretty much leave it out there. You can be imaging in 10 minutes in your backyard. You really don't have to worry about things. You don't have to worry about dew so much here in my part of Southern California, so I don't ever need to worry about a dew buster. Some people do, and that's going to add a couple $100 to your investment. One important aspect that a lot of people don't think about until the first time they try to mount that big old tube up on top of that big old pier and everything is their own health and physical condition. Can you comfortably lift an 11-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain to the top of your mount? A lot of people can't, and you have to ask yourself. Finally, how much light pollution do you have in your main imaging area? If you've got light pollution, you may need to buy a light pollution filter, but practically speaking, if you want to do deep space imaging, you're going to be restricting yourself to narrow band imaging most of the time, the way it is done nowadays. So you're going to have to ask yourself, do you have light pollution around where you are? Or if you do, what kind of equipment changes would that necessitate? So there's some other things you have to know about yourself, and I'm asking you to think about yourself. How do you deal with the world in general? Are you Felix, or are you was it Oscar and Felix? Which one are you? I'm the odd couple. You need things perfect and clean and orderly, or are you just the guy that kind of gets it done? What's your patience and pain threshold? If there's a cable missing, do you know how to get the cable and fix it? Or do you get upset a little bit? Can you fake it? If one thing doesn't work, can you try it a different way? Because some equipment, believe it or not, takes a lot of tender loving care. Other equipment, nope. And it's got a reputation for that. Some equipment, you have to know exactly what's going. It's got to be set up just right, or it's not going to work well for you. And there's a lot of frustrations, a lot of dials, switches, buttons, and everything have to be set perfectly. Are you willing to work your way through that stuff? Or do you want essential turnkey systems? This really matters when you're out buying your software. It really matters when you're buying hardware also. Believe it or not, some hardware is just more forgiving than others. Also, what is your budget personality? Are you going to do it in dribs and drabs, or are you just going to go into the store, tell them you want to be an astro imager, and sell you what you need? Both of those ways can work, but you have to play along with the rest of your personality. You may not be able to afford an auto guider right now, so you'll still want to buy something that'll work. Now, you want a mount that works pretty much without an auto guider no matter what. You can take 30-second, 60-second exposures no matter what. You want that, because that's one of the tests of a good mount, is that it can run without some auto guiding. But if you're going to have to wait for a long time before you get some of this stuff, think that out. Think about what your whole procedure is going to be, what your whole kit and caboodle is going to be. At what level are you going to have this kit before you start buying parts of it? Or just go on into that store and buy it all at once. Which one do you do? Do you have to sweat the decisions? Do you have to check with your wife, your husband, every time you spend money? Or do you just know that you're worthy and you can spend money as however you like? Decide. How are you? Some people sit there and they ask about, well, I could save $40 by buying this, or $40 by that. And if you're worried about that, you need a different hobby, guys. Okay, that $40 is going to be gone in a flash of an eye. You really can't make decisions based just on little amounts of money like that. Also, what's your tolerance for used equipment? In astronomy, there's a pretty good level of care. We take pretty good care of ourselves. Not everybody does. I don't particularly take great care of my stuff, but most people do. And most used equipment you buy is probably worthy. I'd be a little bit skeptical on some cameras and heavy electronic equipment for a couple of reasons. One is they can go bad, but it's pretty easy to check when it's gone bad. But the other, and this is more telling, is that it could get outdated. When I said that I bought somebody's $15,000 worth of Astro equipment for about $6,000, the biggest difference, the things that take the biggest hits are the electronic parts of that. But otherwise, you can pretty much rent equipment. You can go on over to Cloudy Nights, and on Cloudy Nights, you can find all sorts of stuff to buy, and you can buy it and use it, pay the shipping on it, and probably resell it 2 months later for 80 to 90% of what you paid for it. We call that renting equipment. Can you tolerate that? Is that part of your budget personality where you can go ahead and do that kind of stuff? These are some of the questions you should ask yourself. So know who you're going to be trying to please, know what your skill set is, what kind of pictures you're going to take, where you're going to take them and how you're going to take them, what's your own personality and tolerance for impatience and things like that, and know how much you're willing to spend and how easily it is for you to spend money. Know all those things. David, have you been monitoring the questions over there?
I have. There are no questions.
Okay, there's a discussion I can see, because I don't have time to read them as I go along here, but I can see we've had a few over there. So for those of you who are wondering about where the conversation is, http://testingtheastroimagingchannel.com. Go on over there and click on this little button down here, and you will see a whole list of questions that people may or may not be asking. And as of right now, we got 32 people apparently online over there. So you can have your own little conversation. David will monitor it and ask me questions from it if need be. And you can interrupt me as we go along here. Everything going okay? We'll just proceed. Remember I said earlier we're going to talk about you, and then we're going to talk about the equipment. Well, now we're talking about the equipment, and we're going to go talk about some generalizations. We're going to talk about the budget, and then we're going to finally get to equipment. Generalizations, well, we're going to start with you, because again, we just spent 20 minutes talking about you and what you should be asking yourself when you examine your conscience. You're going to be buying yourself an imaging rig, one of these suckers over here that Alson's using in the dark down in San Diego County and Mount Laguna. And he's got his computer and his camera and everything's all set up, taking a picture of the Milky Way or something in the Milky Way. You have to figure out your own personal quirks. We've talked about them already. But it doesn't do any good to talk about them if you don't match those purchases to the needs that you've already defined. All right? And this is something that David and I talked momentarily about before we started the show tonight. He said, are you going to ask any questions about when not to buy equipment? And I said, we're going to touch on it a little bit, and here's where we're touching on it. There are times when you shouldn't buy equipment. Honest. I really, let me explain the concept first. When you're taking pictures, you take pictures for a while and you realize that something is not working. You can't do the something that you want to do. For me, I can't take big pictures, wider field pictures. Well, it's obvious why I can't do that as of right now. I've got a 12-inch RC with a QSI 583. And a 12-inch RC puts out a whole lot of focal length, 2,450 millimeters with the focal length. And I've got a 583, which gives me a pixel scale of something like 0.49 arc seconds per pixel. In seeing, it's usually about 2 arc seconds. And at best, it's at 2 arc seconds, and it's usually more than that. Well, I just can't put that many pixels on it. I've got to bend my camera in order to get a decent image scale. And so that means I've only got half as many pixels eventually to spread across my computer screen. And I'm only catching about, well, my RC will deliver a full 35 millimeter frame plus all nice and flat. And I'm only catching about the middle 25-30% of that. The rest of those photons are all going to waste. So I'm stuck taking pictures of little galaxies, and they're pretty little galaxies, but come on, I want to take something besides pretty little galaxies. I want to take some nebula. Well, there aren't that many small nebula that fit in that particular set of framework. So I've identified a limitation. So I went back to NEAF last April and I said, okay, what camera should I buy? What camera should I buy? And I did not find a camera that could really meet my needs. The only cameras that had big chips were like way too expensive for me right now. Actually, the real reason I wasn't real excited about it is because they were all 15, 20-year-old designs, and I was waiting for a new one. And I was told to wait. I was told to wait till this summer and maybe we'll have something new. My point being is that I went and I figured out what was keeping me from taking the pictures I wanted. And that's what you have to do. If you haven't learned yet to use your guider, don't go out and buy a new guider. You learn how to use your guider or whatever other piece of equipment you're talking about. And then when you know you're working it right and it's still not working, then it may be time to investigate a new guiding system entirely. Okay? And same thing, just identify your limitations of the existing equipment, where it's holding you back, or your existing software, and take it from there. Also, there are a lot of things to talk about as far as the product itself. Every manufacturer, every item gets a reputation. Sometimes they're deserved, sometimes they're not deserved. Some people can get some things out of a product that other people can't get. Everybody talks about it, and a lot of people don't know what they're talking about, and they talk about it. And it gets a bad reputation or a good reputation that may not be deserved. I don't know. But check out the reputation. Secondly, manufacturers all have reputations. There are a couple of manufacturers that I simply will not buy from. I'm sorry, their stuff is just old and outdated, and I just have never had good success with it. So forget about it. That's a generalization. Yeah, it's okay to pick a few manufacturers you don't want to play with and just skip them. See if they've got a trial period for you. Doesn't happen too often in equipment, but some dealers might give you a trial period or let you try out something. But see if you've got a trial period, particularly with software. Check warranties. If a company trusts its product, it'll give you a tremendous warranty. Okay, check if it's software, see what it takes to renew it, what you're going to have to pay to renew it. Do you have to pay $40 every year, or do you own it? Do you have to pay $10 every month to keep that software? do you own it? Which is it? Check out your warranty. One of the most important thing is support. An awful lot of times, support consists of a manual. The manual may or may not be in English, and it may not be in standard English. It may rely on Harry's Astro Shed to keep it going. It may rely on blogs on a website someplace. Or, as Mike Miller tells us all the time about the software he uses, I'll tell you, you can call the guy and he'll be there, and he'll dial right into your computer, and he'll figure out what's wrong and everything else like that, and he can fix it right there, and it'll just be working. We've got one of us here on the Astro Imaging channel who's kind of making a business out of being support. The stuff he sells is the same stuff as everybody else sells, but he promises that you can call him any time of day or night, and we hope he's doing really well on all that. So support is tremendously important. You can get it from other people, you can get it from the manufacturer, but figure out what that support is going to be before you invest in any equipment. Check out what other people are using. Walk around at the Star Party and see what other people have thought were worthwhile. It's not Astro Imaging, but there's a certain collimating device that has been around for quite some time. I have a friend from Sweden flew all the way over to Oregon to go to the Oregon Star Party with us last year, and he had bought one of these things and walked up to Mel up there, who's one of the gurus at Oregon Star Party, and he says, well, I got this thing to collimate the scopes, and Mel looks at it and says, yeah, I never use those things. They just don't work right. So what do people actually use? You got to walk around and see what people are getting value out of. Now, where can you walk around? You can walk around on cloudy nights. You can walk around at AstroBin, see what people are taking pictures with. And if you like their pictures, maybe you like the equipment they're using also. There's nobody able to take pictures with XYZ refractor because it's a crappy refractor. A poopy refractor, I suppose I should say, in case somebody's underage listening. Sorry about that. And that's why they don't use it. Okay, now XYZ advertises a lot. They've got a low price. All that stuff's going for them, but you don't see any pictures taken with that thing. Well, look at AstroBin. What are pictures being taken with? If other people are taking pictures with it, you can probably take pictures with it too. And then you have to compare it to what else is available. Remember my story about the 583 on my RC12? I like my 583. I wish it were a 683 with an 8-position filter wheel instead of the 583 with the 5, but that's because of when I bought it. That's all I could buy. Well, now things have changed. There are other, I wanted to buy a 16200, but when I compared the two at NEAF and at various other places, I found out that, you know what? It's really not that big a step up. It doesn't do me any good to move from my current to the 16200. It just doesn't do me any good. It's not that much bigger. It's bigger, but it's still leaving a lot of wasted photons coming through my big scope. So I have to compare it to what my other choices are. So that's one of the things to, okay, where are we? We're going the wrong way. Okay. Where can you buy this stuff? Hey, my
Hi, everybody. This is Alex.
Got to turn off my sound. Okay, I've screwed this up entirely. David, where are we in the, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, cool. Let's get back to, this is, there's supposed to be a title right up here at the top. It says, where do you buy? If you can buy locally, buy locally.
Hey, Alex,
Yeah.
we don't see that. What we still see is about you personality. Or at least that's what I see.
Budget, where to buy?
I know, Eric, Tolga, you guys seeing anything different?
Okay, now you're on my desktop screen, right?
Nope.
Well, that's interesting.
I can see. I see the desktop screen.
Okay.
I can
unless-
see your desktop screen.
Yep.
I will go back to PowerPoint and see what's happening with it.
It sounds like it's just me, Alex. So keep going. I'm gonna see if I can figure out what's going on my end.
You should see people playing at you should see my PowerPoint backup screen, and now you should see people playing at NEAF.
Yes. Yep, it's all good.
Okay, where do you buy this stuff? Well, close physically if you can. If you can buy something nearby, but for instance, with me, I've got 3 telescope stores: OPT, Woodland Hills, and Orange County Telescopes, Mike Fowler. But the closest one is an hour and a half from my house. And those 3 scope places serve 14 million people. There's 14 million people between me and the ocean, okay? And it is just far away. So basically, when I say close physically, yeah, there's also close by phone and email. See, I can call these guys anytime I want and visit with them. And I actually know them by phone and by email that I've never even met them in person, okay? And that's good to know. Customer loyalty really counts a lot. I think we should all be, well, most of us are on Cloudy Nights a lot. We should all realize that Cloudy Nights is sponsored by Astronomics, and we should buy stuff from Astronomics now and then because they do that. It's also good to know people. Up in the upper box there's me taking a picture up at RTMC with Farah. Farah's in charge of Woodland Hills. Farah, we just passed Farah in the NEAF show. So when you call somebody and ask them which camera is best, you deserve to pay them something. And the way you pay them is by buying stuff from them. All right. So patronize those who are giving you advice. It's a good idea. Get a guru, get somebody that you know. It doesn't have to be somebody who works in a store, but somebody that knows their stuff and can help you with stuff. Also, you've been watching a little movie going by of NEAF here. I don't know if that's a really good place to be buying some of this stuff. There's 3 or 4 actual vendors here selling stuff, and the rest of them are showing stuff. And that's an important distinction. A lot of them are just here to tell you that they've got new stuff and things like that. But Woodland Hills or OPT is not necessarily going to bring exactly what you're looking for. They're not going to bring that camera. They just can't cart everything. So what you do before these shows, you call them and tell them that you're interested in picking them up. And when that happens, you're probably going to get the sale discount. That sale discount can be 5 or 8%, or it can be no sales tax, which for many people is another 5 to 10%. So that's one of the things you've got to pay attention to. Finally, there's the internet. Most sales actually take place on the internet. Enjoy it. Okay, that's where you can buy a lot of this stuff. All right. Now, what does money buy? There's a lot of stuff inherent in this answer. There's a lot of BS involved in just what I think, and there's no research involved here. But I think you do get bragging rights. There are an awful lot of people in our little part of the hobby that just enjoy knowing that they've got better, that they paid more. Okay. But you also usually get pretty nice fit and finish. I'll tell you, when you take a $1,000 scope and rub your hand over it, and you take a $3,000 scope of the same aperture, they're different. They feel different. When I jump in a RAV4 and drive around, I'm not driving the BMW X3. Same size car, look the same, theoretically do the same things. but boy, the fit and finish is a little bit different. Both of them very nice, but they're different. But there's other things that, well, all these things matter. Convenience. When you pay more money, you can often get more convenient features. Things like wireless interfaces, so that you don't have to have as many cables around. Cables through the mount instead of around the mount, so that they're not, you don't have excess cables flying all over the place. You generally get more accuracy. That is, if it says go to, it's winding up within 10 pixels instead of 30 or 40 pixels or half a field of view. You almost always get size out of more money in any given quality. Let's face it, a 6-inch refractor is going to cost more than a 4-inch refractor, and a $15,000 mount is going to be able to carry more than a $10,000 mount, and a lot more than a $1,000 mount. Generally, the better things are made and the more they cost, the longer they're going to last. Not only are they going to last longer because they're made better and therefore mechanically they're just going to work longer because their fit and finish is better, so things fit together better, so you don't get tired of them and kick them as often, but they're more likely to be upgraded. Astrophysics will put out a new control center or something like that. And so you can buy and hold forever and ever, and these things will still do a wonderful job for you. They're very reliable and repeatable. If you tell them to do something, they'll do it. They almost always have good support. One thing I want to say about support that I don't think I've said yet is I like the idea of having good support, but I hate having to use it. If the only thing a piece of software has going for it is that it's got good support for when it breaks, I don't want it. I want it so that it didn't break in the first place. If the only thing a piece of equipment has is that, boy, I get good turnaround. Glenn, the other day at the Pomona Valley Club, I was speaking over there, and Glenn came up to me and said, hey, I bought myself a G11. You know why? And I said, why? And he says, because they're local. And they are. Los Mondi manufactures over in Burbank now, I think. And so we can drive over there in an hour or two and get something fixed. But it's even nicer that you don't ever need to get it fixed. That's what can I say. There's two other things that money buys. It puts you on the leading edge. Okay? Things are cool up on the leading edge. Things are new. They're exciting. They're different. They figured out a better way to do it. They've got belt drives instead of cog drives, or any one of 1,000 things. And so it's fun being on the leading edge. But the leading edge is also the bleeding edge is what it's called quite often, because you have to put up with growing pains now and then. You never want the brand new redesigned, whatever car. You want to wait for a little while, wait for them to figure out where it went wrong. The brand new update on the software, wait till release 2 or 3, not necessarily release 2 or 3, but 2.02, 2.04. Yeah, then they'll have worked out that wonderful new release on the software. A second thing about what money buys is a little bit of money buys a little bit of stuff. A little bit more money buys a little bit more stuff usually. And there is some kind of a linear relationship at first. That is, the more you spend, the better it gets. But that linear relationship breaks down and you reach a point of diminishing returns. I figure after you buy a mount, the mount that comes with your $1,200 scope, and yeah, you can take pictures with it. You've paid $1,000 essentially for the mount and a little bit more for the scope. So maybe $1,200-$1,500 altogether. You get yourself a $2,000 mount and it's probably going to be substantially better than that $1,000 mount. And then you jump into the $3,500-$3,800 range for the Los Mondi class of mounts. And it's going to be better yet again than well, I won't name names, but those down there at the $2,000 level. Okay, it's going to be better. You go up to the $5,000, $5,000, $6,000 mounts, okay, up in there, they're not necessarily going to be all that much better. They're not going to be $1,000 better. All right, the curve is going to be flattening out. If, however, you're one of the people that's working on the A-Pod that don't have time to put up with baloney mounts that aren't pointing exactly where you want them to, that have problems with periodic error, you know, that don't like plus or minus 3, you have to have plus or minus 1.5. Okay, you can spend another $1,000, but by the time you spend $15,000, you don't have all that much more than the guy that spent $7,000. There is a law of diminishing return after a point. So remember that. Generally, you get what you pay for, but after a while, it falls off. Now, ask yourself 2 questions. How much can you spend? How much will you spend? You should have all read The Millionaire Next Door. You cannot tell if there's a millionaire living next door to you. You cannot tell how much money somebody has by what kind of astroimaging equipment they have, okay? Because people have different values for money. People either spend it or they don't spend it. People are happy with something. Does it make them happy to spend that extra money? For some people, they want to spend the money because they like the bragging rights. They like, they're the Felix that has to be all precise, or, you know, or Oscar, or that's just, you know, they aren't the Oscar, okay? They just need that. So, but you have to ask yourself, without starving the wife and kids and stuff like that, without robbing the college fund, how much can you spend? And ask yourself, how much are you willing to spend easily? Ask yourself. And then let's get into some numbers. You are going to have to buy yourself a mount. You're going to have to get yourself a tube, a camera, a guiding system, a computer, some software, and your guiding system doesn't have to be an ST4. This is a really old picture. I've got a brown mustache back then. You're going to have some software on that computer, and you're going to have some extras. You're going to have a blue chair like this one, and you're going to have a little aluminum table that folds up, and you're going to have all sorts of other weird stuff just to make yourself happy. So these are the kinds of things you're going to need. So figure this out. How much is this going to cost you? Well, it depends on how you do it. For what I'm about to tell you is a number, but realize that for many of us, we already have a bunch of this stuff. We've already got a blue chair someplace. Many of us already have a telescope someplace. So we already existingly have something, and we don't need to spend more. We can buy used and get some of this stuff for 50%, probably 70 or 80% of its original value, depending on what it is. Or we could buy it new and pay 100% for it, okay? So it's hard to say what you're actually going to spend. I'll show you what it costs, but what you're actually going to be spending is something else. We've already talked about that you can go to some shows and get discounts, and you can also bundle some of this kind of stuff. You know, Maxim cost $600, but it was free at the time I bought my QSI 583. So I didn't pay anything for Maxim at the time, okay? So you keep that in mind, that this isn't necessarily what it's actually going to cost you, but this is what it costs. You need a mount, a tube, a camera, guider, computer, software extras. You can do it at the basic level, the intermediate level, or the advanced level. But I figure, and these are just my numbers that I think are realistic, it's going to cost you $5,000 to be a basic imager. Remember, we've already bought a lot of this equipment. Many of us getting into astroimaging for the first time have already bought it. So you don't need to buy brand new. You probably already got a computer around. You probably already got a DSLR around. There's $1,000 off right there. Okay. So keep that in mind. You can see that this advanced figure is really lowballing it. Where I put a $7,000 mount in there, it's quite common to have $10,000, $15,000 mounts in an observatory. Oh, and by the way, I don't have an entry here for observatory, which will bump this by another $8,000 to $10,000 probably. okay? You will notice the old Maxim here. That's not Maxim DL, but it's the old Maxim. Most of that money goes into your mount. The single most important thing you can buy is a mount. Buy one that will last you a long time. Buy one that will last you when you move from a refractor to a Schmidt-Cass or a bigger scope. Buy one that's going to last you a while. And the mount is the most critical aspect. Mounts do not change. No, people do not change their mounts nearly as often as they swap tubes around, buy new cameras. Cameras get outmoded quicker because their electronics are changing and things like that. Guiders are getting down inexpensive enough that you can buy a new guider now and then and stuff like that. Computers, you go through computers anyway just by the nature of their thing. And software is down in the part where it's more in the discretionary funds. You don't have to really invest your kids' education money in it or anything like that. But be prepared to spend about $5,000 if you want to be a good, basic, deep space imager, probably using a DSLR. You should probably be starting out on a refractor. And this is the new retail price. Considering that you already have probably $1,000 worth of that stuff already, and probably a tube and everything else, and a mount, you really can get into this hobby for less than that $5,000. But if you want to be good, it's going to cost you $5,000. Okay, that pretty much that. Have we gotten any new questions there, David?
Yeah, back to one but just answered. Specifically talking about what % of a budget should go to each component. Let's see. Christoph was asking specifically about Astrotech RCs. We should probably cover that a little bit separately if we want to talk about it. So nothing else here.
I've got the OPT, the TPO version of the Astrotech RC, and I've been perfectly happy with mine. It takes great pictures for me. It is not the limiting factor in my astro imaging, but again, I promised I wouldn't be getting down into specifics about that kind of stuff. Where are we in this? You know, like I said, I've got the OPT version of that, the Guangsheng Optic RC. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Let's talk about equipment. This is actually where I was inspired to prepare this presentation. When on cloudy nights somebody was asking about, you know, what equipment should I buy? And what I was amazed at was everybody was answering the question without ever asking the guy any of the questions like, how big and strong are you? Where are you going to be imaging? What are you going to be taking pictures of? They didn't ask him any of those questions. But whatever mount you're going to buy, make sure it's got sufficient weight capacity. And there's always this question coming up, particularly among newbies, that counts only the equipment. Counterweights are not part of the equation. Yes, counterweights are mounted up there on the mount, but no, they don't count. If they say it's going to hold 40 pounds worth of stuff, well, is that a photographic rating or a visual rating? For visual, you don't need it. If it's a visual rating, assume that it's really only 20 pounds, and then add up the weight of your camera, focuser, anything else that's going to go on up there, and decide whether you got sufficient weight capacity. Also, there is no standard for rating this stuff, so think it out. Look over at the features and specifications. This is one for a, what is this, the 1100? No, this is, oh, I forgot where I got this. I think it's a software bisque, the Mighty. I'm not sure. It says approximately 45 pounds. No, this is from astrophysics. So it's probably in astrophysics. And so it says approximately 45 pounds, and they're only guidelines. Some telescopes are long for their weight, et cetera, et cetera. So be careful about that. What you're really looking for in a mount, regardless of how it gets it, regardless of whether it's because it's got a belt drive or because it's got exceptionally fine gears or a very large ring gear in it, it should be correctable to have a very low periodic error. Okay, 7 arc seconds peak to peak, and is guaranteed in this mount, which I think is an AP 1100 mount. Okay, and it's correctable to less than that because they ship it nowadays with PEM Pro's periodic error correction in it. So you're looking for low periodic error. You're looking for usability. Why does that keep changing? You're looking for usability, transportability, and stability. You're looking for a solid mount. Much of the stability comes from the weight capacity. So if it says it's got a high weight capacity and you've over mounted it, like Christoph, are you really putting that 80 millimeter refractor on top of that new Titan of yours? My, that's gonna. You better have a sign on it explaining that you're gonna grow a bigger scope someday for that one, because that's over mounted, my young man. Okay, anyway, also you have to ask yourself, is it suitable to the target? By that I mean, you don't need a $15,000 mount to take nightscape images. You don't need a $15,000 mount in most cases for scientific work. You just don't need the absolute precision and the absolute carrying capacity. You don't need a $15,000 mount for certain things, okay? You can get by with a whole lot less. So ask yourself that question. The next two things I'm going to talk about are the tube and the camera. Now, I'm going to be using language here about image circle and image scale and things like that. And there's absolutely no time to talk about all that stuff. We spent 2 hours a couple of years back, and here are the links to Sensor Sense Part 1 and Part 2, where they described how to match a tube and a camera together so that you're going to get the best performance out of it. Realize that your tube and camera will both be changing. They're going to change more than your mount and everything else. You just get tired of taking that kind of picture, so you put instead of a big long focal length on it, you put a short focal length wide angle refractor on it, or you change cameras because they invented a new type of camera, stuff like that. So you'll be changing that stuff around, and you want to swap them back and forth. But your mount you'll keep for a long time usually. Lots of kinds of tubes out there. What you're looking for in a tube, just one point on your skill level. The reason people recommend short focus refractors, short focal length refractors, is not because they take better pictures. They do take very good pictures, but so is any good quality scope take very good pictures. It's because it's the short focal length that matters. Okay, a short focal length is much more forgiving. And that's why we recommend that people start off with a short focal length refractor. You put big focal length on it, and it gets, every mistake is easier to see. Every shake of the mount results in more wobbly stars. The tube has to match the target. Now, most of us, of course, want to change targets regularly. Well, you know what? You can't really do that. You got to make some decisions. Maybe you need 2 or 3 different tubes. That's fine. But your tube should match the target. If you're going to be taking pictures of little galaxies, you need lots of focal length. If you're going to be taking pictures of big nebula, you don't want focal length. You want wide angle view, which comes from a shorter focal length. You need it to be compatible with your camera. Go back to that Sensor Sense talk and look at the things about image circle. That's how big an image the telescope delivers. And the image scale, how many arc seconds of actual sky it delivers to each pixel on your sensor. After you've determined that, you can decide whether your camera is compatible. But watch out. Remember, I'm the guy that just said that you've got 2 or 3 different tubes. You've also got binning. You can bin a camera, and that's what I'm doing with my QSI 583 to overcome some of my difficulties. I shoot everything at least 2x2 binning. Otherwise, I just have to get some kind of proper image scale to it. You also want quality, color. You want an apo refractor if you can get it. If you can't get it, hey, image with what you got. And it should be correctable from edge to edge. By that, I mean that some telescopes do not deliver a flat field. They deliver a very good image for your eyeball, but your eyeball is not flat. And a sensor is flat. So you should have something that's correctable because you are taking astro images and you've got a flat sensor there. Mechanically, they should be good. They should have a good fit and finish. They should be rigid, and they should be of the proper size to fit on whatever your mount is. Okay, so check out your qualifications and check that out. Now, your camera should be the single most important thing to check on is that it's got the lowest possible noise. You want to be after the low noise. And another way of saying that is highest dynamic range. There are some cameras that do have more noise per pixel, some sensors do, but because their dynamic range is so much higher, it really doesn't matter. So you want the lowest noise, highest dynamic range. If you've got two cameras that are the same, one's got lower noise or higher dynamic range, go for it. You want sensor size and pixel size that match your tube. These two pictures over here are interesting. They're of the same thing. This is the spider and the fly, it's called, and you can see the spider here. And he's going to eat the fly, which is over here. Well, this is the fly, okay? They were taken with the same camera on two different tubes. And you can see that they give dramatically different pictures. This is called, what is that called? It's called the Little Orion, it's called the Little Orion Nebula because it's got the same kind of little star forming region and blue and pink, or red and blue nebulosity and stuff. This is it at one scale. This is it at another scale. And all that scale stuff comes from sensor size, pixel size, and matching it with the telescope, okay? You have to decide whether you want one-shot color or mono. Remember earlier we talked about your skill level? One-shot color might be easier. It might be easier in certain kinds of weather if you're the kind of person that can only image for a short time. A lot of people prefer one-shot color. Some people say it's easier to process one-shot color. I don't see that. I think that mono is very easy to batch process, so it's just no big deal. But that's a decision that you will have to make for yourself. You certainly want cooling if you can at all afford it. But cooling means everything is going to cost you $1,000 more. A DSLR that you can get for $1,600, you're going to have to pay $1,200 to $1,800 for a cooled Astro camera that does the same kind of thing. Mechanicals, they should be solid. Everything should fit together well. And one important key thing is check the reputation of the software drivers. Far too many computers or cameras are coming out nowadays that are wonderful in specifications, but as two different people have told me, one at RTMC, one at NEAF, says about one set of camera that I was thinking, you know, I said, well, what about so-and-so? And they go, yeah, great, you're right. Perfect specification. Yeah, great specification. Yeah. The only problem with them is that they don't frickin' work. You know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. It all depends on how they feel that particular day. You don't want to get into that, and it's largely based on software drivers from what I could gather. So check to see that all those things work. You need a guiding system. Luckily, the software is usually free, PhD. You can choose between a separate guide scope or on-axis guider, dual chip, or on camera. Each of these have its benefits. You really, if you've got a tube with a movable mirror like an SCT or a Newt, you probably want to go with the on-axis guide or dual chip or on camera. Otherwise, you can get by with a separate guide scope. They're easier to find. The guide stars easier because you got a freaking telescope gathering everything for your little guider. But they're not as rigid, generally speaking. So you're trading off those two options. Whatever you get the most sensitive camera you can afford. You can buy a $250 guider, but you just don't see as many stars to guide off of in that as you get with the $550 to $600 camera. And really, it can be worth it. It can be particularly worth it if you've chosen to go with an off-axis guider, because they're harder to find guide stars. And since you've got less choice of guide stars, then that's an issue. A dual chip camera has the guiding camera chip in the same plane as a regular imaging chip, and that's fine in theory. Most people find that their filter is getting in the way of their guiding, and so they lose a lot of their capability. And also, you want the biggest chip you can find, because the bigger the chip, the more chance you have of finding a guide star. Okay, bigger the chip, the more sensitive, the more chances you're going to have of finding a good guide star. Computers, there's not much to say here. For acquisition in particular, almost any computer that'll run Windows 10, and I say Windows 10 because most of your acquisition software likes to be in Windows 10. It's just it's a Windows-driven world. So think about getting Windows software for or something that runs on your Windows. Many of us already have a laptop. Anything above Windows 7 should probably work for astroimaging acquisition. For processing, hey, you want as much memory and speed as you can. I'm dealing right now with a 8 or 10-year-old computer on my laptop or on my desktop, and that's what I use, and it works fine. It was originally a Vista system, and it still works fine. I'm not as much a geek as some of these people are, complaining about, oh, this thing's so slow, this thing's so slow. It doesn't bother me to process on a slower computer. Some people it does. But at any rate, think about that. Then you finally get into the software issue. There's so much to say here, particularly about PixInsight and Photoshop. They both are very capable programs. They both do wonderful things. Make sure that whatever you buy is compatible with your hardware. Make sure that your skill level, it changes through the years. Eventually, I think you're going to want to go to PixInsight, keeping up with some Photoshop. PixInsight is just a more powerful program for astroimaging. But you can get by with a whole lot of free software or cheap software. One that I particularly like is Nebulosity. But your skill level will change. You should just face it. You need to get into it. Your temperament is also going to change a little bit. As you know, I'm not a technical person at all, and yet I've managed to get a lot out of PixInsight, even though it requires a lot of you. You're looking for ease of use and power. Having said I'm into PixInsight and the ease of use is important, those two don't seem to fit together, but because it's so powerful, it overcomes that. At any rate, make sure that it's compatible with your hardware, or change your hardware to match your software. Make sure that you've got a good skill level to go along with it. There's lots of choice of software out there, and luckily it's inexpensive enough that you will be able to change it through the years. Also, much of it has trial periods where you can get to learn how to use it. Now, there's one last category, extra equipment. As you can see, I've got a little observatory in my backyard, and it's got a polar alignment scope in it. It's hidden right now. I've got a monitor over there with the red screens. The red screen goes over it so that you can't see what's on the monitor when you're out with other people. You're going to need power supplies and batteries, 2 heaters, cords, and connectors. Factor all this stuff in. One thing I forgot to say about the software. A lot of people complain about the price of software. You will notice that a $300 package of software is is a very small percentage of how much you're actually spending for getting into the hobby of astroimaging. Buy the software that you need to get the job done. Okay, and buy all the extra stuff you need, including building your own observatory eventually. That pretty much covers what I had to say about what I should buy. I don't know if we're doing, and got any questions, David?
Yeah, so Sean and Eric have some questions for you guys. You want to ask those?
Is Sean in the room?
Yeah, I'm in here.
Okay, Sean, go ahead and ask.
Oh, you mean about those earlier questions? The only one I was asking earlier was about, you're going from basic to those intermediate mounts. Is there a limit when you start getting intermediate mounts to where you can't physically set them up every night, or even from an intermediate to advanced? Are there mounts in each one of those categories that you can physically set up every night, or the more advanced ones have to be on piers? And
I'm not sure. Well, first off, I didn't hear everything correctly because we got a lot of feedback in there too. But is your question?
You kind of answered it as you went through your. If I'd have waited another couple minutes when you got to mounts, you pretty much answered it.
Okay, some mounts are better set up in your backyard permanently on a pier, and all mounts are better on a pier. Pretty much all mounts are better on a pier, but some mounts you have to remember that if you've got to carry them, they better be separable or something like. I don't know, are you guys looking at my observatory here?
Yeah.
There's parts of this mount come apart so that you can carry it around a whole lot more easily. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm looking to get off the NEQ6 and move to something a little more robust, and I have to set up. I could do a pier, but I don't mind going out and setting it up. But if I go to a bigger mount, how much bigger can I go and still physically carry it in and out of the house?
And you're asking the right question. You have to know your own limitations. In visual observing, there's an expression that the best telescope is the one that gets used. And if it's a pain in the butt to set up your astroimaging rig, you're not going to do it. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, Sean, I'll say that I'm currently using an Astrophysics 1100, and that breaks down in pieces, and it takes more time to set it up, but it's certainly transportable, right? It's easy for me to take it out, move it around, set things up every night, and I don't have an observatory that it's in. So at least, you can go up to that level, but you have to pay the price in terms of, it's going to take a while to set things up.
Yeah, that's not a problem. The NEQ6 I break apart. It's not really that heavy, but, getting up into the higher range, I just, it comes down to, do I want to travel up and down the steps with it or not, or do I want to just put a pier?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
So Eric, did you have a question?
It wasn't really a question, but we talk about as you improve your processing or your imaging that you want to move up on equipment. And you mentioned that the quality equipment is usually a better buy. And it's a better buy because you can resell it for maybe 60, 70%. So you're not investing in an all new mount at $10,000. You're investing in $10,000 minus what you get for your old mount. And the better quality telescopes and mounts will retrieve a better price when you resell them. That's a factor.
That's true.
Hey, Alex,
Yeah.
could you talk a little bit maybe about getting started with like remote observatories, maybe something like an eye telescope instead of investing a lot of big bucks in equipment?
Well, if I were buying equipment for a remote observatory, I would make sure that it's got all the things we talked about on the expensive stuff: reliability, precision. You need to know that when you tell it to do something, it's going to do it consistently the same way. Is that the kind of thing you're asking?
No, I mean for someone that's wondering if they want to do astrophotography rather than spend money on equipment, give something like iTelescope a try. The remote subscription service where you can do your imaging with $20,000 equipment for
Okay.
$30 a month or something.
I'm gonna let somebody else comment on that. And you're talking about rentoscopes and things like that, where or there's an observatory farm someplace that allows you to rent time on their observatory or pool data with other people and then use their data. Is that correct?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. I mean, there are subscription services that you can have access to big equipment and not have to spend a lot of money.
Well, I'm not sure about that part about not have to spend a lot of money. From what I've seen, those services cost some. And if anybody's got any ideas on that, if they're in the room, please pipe up. And if they're not, please type up. Hey, that was cute, wasn't it? I have never taken advantage of any of those kinds of things, and so I'd hate to speak for that. I just don't know. I don't have the experience in that.
Alec, you want me to make a couple of comments on that?
Yeah, because you do that. Well, you have a remote observatory. I don't think you have a rent-a thing though. But go ahead, talk.
No, I don't. I think the one thing you get when you want to do remote imaging, whether it be iTelescope, Deep Sky West, whether you get your own peer at the SRO, you're really going to an extremely dark site, and the quality of your data is going to improve significantly. And as a result, you have probably reached a point in your processing where you can take advantage of that quality kind of data. These things, they vary in expense from a couple $1,000s a month, and you got to buy the equipment, to much less if you're going to Deep Sky West and you're just sharing them out. But the thing you really get on remote imaging, you get really quality data that you probably can't get in your local setup.
I'll add a couple other comments here. You can really break this down into two problems. See, astrophotography in general can be broken down into two problems. One is data acquisition, and one is processing, right? If you're going with something like iTelescopes, or if you're using data that someone's posted out there's a post on Cloudy Nights going right now talking about people posting their own data for others to use to learn on. You can do a lot on the processing side, but you don't get anything from the acquisition side. So it kind of also depends on what you want to do, right? If you want to learn the acquisition side, there's really no substitute for interacting with real equipment, right?
Okay, I'm seeing I'm checked out of my slideshow. So Sean has pointed out that a lot of time they sell stuff at discount when the show is over. Like if you're at NEAF on Sunday afternoon, they're more willing to sell some of their demo models, and they'd rather sell it than ship it back home so that you can get some deals on that. And that's true from what I've heard. I've never been around NEAF on a Sunday afternoon, but
they've actually posted it on their sites too.
They'll post it on their sites? Okay.
Yeah, I've gone over to the vendor sites, and they'll have a sale, and you can look on there. It's stuff that they brought out to NEAF, and they want to sell it.
Oh, you mean they brought it back home and then they still want to sell it?
Yeah, they brought it back home and they can't put it back on the shelf, so they just sell it at a rate.
Okay. Hey, talk among yourselves. I'm going to be checking out the questions on the other computer over here.
Yeah, so Alex, I've gone through most of those. There's a lot of comments in there, but not necessarily related to the presentation. I've kind of distilled them down here a little bit, and some of these still aren't related to this, but we'll at least bring them up. So Christoph was asking, is a truss setup not as good as a closed OTA in a heavily light polluted area? I think he got an answer from George already. And I'm not sure if yours is a truss or not, Alex.
My I was reading. My RC is a truss tube scope. Yes.
But you're not in a light polluted area, right? So it's probably
The desert observatory is in a fairly dark location. It's probably as dark as you can be and still be within 3 hours of LA. Yeah. So and I do have a shroud over it so that it doesn't. It's not open tubed.
all right. Dino was asking the best way to determine arc seconds per pixel of a telescope. I gave him an answer in the post and pointed him to 12D strings, online field of view calculator. One that we haven't answered, are there any moon phases where you guys don't even bother to shoot HA? That's not on topic at all, but I know anyone want to join in and answer what they do for that one?
I shot last night, but I shot.
There is no moon phase where I won't shoot HA. As long as the moon is not impinging on the tube of the scope, I'll shoot HA.
Yeah, I'm the same way,
different
Eric.
matter, though.
I'm the same way, Eric. Unless the target's, very near the moon, I'll still shoot HA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the same position as well. If it's far enough away from the moon that it's not going to end up impacting it, absolutely continue to shoot.
Now, I'll put a caveat that if you're using a fairly wide bandpass, maybe
Don't.
that's not entirely true. But I'm using a 3 nanometer filter, so that my specific setup.
I would agree. If you're using an 8 nanometer HA, that could be some issues. But if you're using even a 5 or a 3, you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, because I shoot with the 5 nanometer on my setup on the FSQ as well as the IDK. And the FSQ is a certainly faster scope, and it's not impacted. As long as I'm shooting far enough away, the 5 nanometer will get away with it. Now, if you're shooting in 03, if we're talking about additional narrowband, 03, I recommend 3 nanometer over the 5 for a couple of reasons. One, contrast, and two, just to further eliminate any potential impact by the moon itself.
Yeah, and there's a lot of blue light coming in the moon, which is where the O3 is. And also O3 is pretty dim except for a handful of targets.
All right. So, Alex, at one point you mentioned one of the reasons why shorter focal lengths tend to get short focal length refractors tend to be recommended is because that shorter focal length is what's important, and that allows you to, not see a lot of tracking errors. It's easier, right?
Yeah, training.
But I would add weight to that as well, right? It is, less demanding on other equipment.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's also lighter. You can get by with a smaller mount. The sail area is not as large, so if the wind blows, it doesn't blow it around as much. All those things add up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that.
Hey, Alex. Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
One thing that I was going to mention too, that a lot of people are going to come here for the first time, they're going to see those numbers, that $5,000 number to start. And I just want to mention that I bought they got those sky trackers. Optron has that new 11-pound Sky Guider Pro you can do 5 and 8 minute exposures with it. It's $500, so you can use it. You can fly with it and travel with it, and it's got counterweights. You can put your camera. You can even mount a CCD imager on it. So there is an opportunity for them to still do some pretty decent sky shots and get some nebulas and stuff like that, and get some pretty long exposures on a minimum amount of money to spend.
Remember when I said $5,000? I said basic deep space. I qualified it all the way along.
That's true.
You can take lots of wonderful pictures with whatever you've got. You should go ahead and do it. Always do use whatever it is you already have. And yeah, the trackers, I've got one. I think everybody probably has one. They take wonderful shots, but they aren't going to get you the deep focused on a Galaxy, and I guess when I say it's going to take you $5,000 to really get into the hobby, I mean, if you want to take pictures of galaxies, nebula up close, and you really want them to come out to the point where you can show them off to people on your computer,
Yeah, I hear you.
I think it's going to cost that much.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, to further tack on to what Alex is saying, and just to further clarify or to iterate his point or reiterate his point, is that the greater the focal length of the telescope itself, and certainly I'm not speaking at you, Sean. This is just for the general audience. Is that the greater the focal length that you have, that the greater the demand on the mount is going to be in order to provide you with that accurate tracking, to give you that fine detail so it comes out as sharp as possible. And that is certainly true. A lot of the times you will hear people that state, well, you got to spend minimum of X, and using Alex's example of $5,000. It's certainly true. There's nothing to exaggerate about that. I started off with, I hate to pick on it, but Celestron's CGEM DX with with their 11-inch Edge HD platform sitting on top of it, and being able to get nice long exposures at that kind of an image scale with a DSLR attached to it, even in a hyperstar format, was an arduous task. From there, I moved on to Mach 1, and then to an AP 1100 as well as a 1600, and there's certainly massive differences, and it comes with ease of use. Certainly comes with it as well. So yes, the mount itself is the probably most critical piece, I would say, depending upon your goals.
Last night I was at my club dinner before the meeting, and I told him that I was getting this talk ready, and said that I had never calculated it out until yesterday afternoon when I was getting this thing ready, and I looked at the guy across the table from me and I said, it costs like $5,000 to really get into it at this full level. He says, I didn't pay $5,000, and my pictures are good, and his pictures are good. And I said, aren't you on, a Meade LX200, 12-inch or 10-inch or something like that? And he goes, yeah. And I said, how much did that cost? $4,000. Oh yeah, I guess you're right. It does cost that much. You know what I mean? It was like, you don't realize it because you already had that stuff. He was already doing visual with it. So don't let the $5,000 number throw you off. But it's going to cost you to get in, to play this game is going to cost you. If what you want to do is take pictures of the moon with a fixed tripod and your iPhone, it's not going to cost you anything like that, okay? But that's not what we're talking about, I think, on the Astro Imaging channel. I don't think there are many people here on the Astro Imaging channel that come to find out how to do that kind of photography. It's wonderful photography, and I do it, but not what most of us are here for.
Yeah, most of the good thing about the presentation too is that you've done is that a lot of times when you get started, you end up buying stuff a couple of times. So you end up spending a whole lot more than $5,000 to sell it up because you didn't know what you were doing to begin with. And you end up buying something and have to buy something different afterwards. So that's been a good help for those people that are just getting started, because I know I did that. I bought some things that I didn't need, ended up having to rebuy. So, if I could add up all that money, I could be into that other amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly a piece of advice I like to give a lot of beginners is if you're going to again, it all comes down to your goals. What are you looking to accomplish? Do you want to compete at the Greenwich level where you're competing internationally to have one of the best astro images? Well, yeah, there's certainly some financial requirements there to compete at that level. Now, not every single person that is making it to the top has $100,000 worth of equipment. There are certainly people that can produce some amazing images with a DSLR and an Ioptron SkyTracker Pro. That's what I use just for my travel stuff and what I carry in my bag, as Sean had stated previously. It produces great quality imagery. It all comes down to, it's not just the financials you dump into it, because it's just like, I used to race motorcycles, and I had one of the nicest bikes on the track, but I wasn't a podium rider at all. It's all about the rider. You can give some of the best imagers, some of the cheapest equipment, and they're still going to produce some fantastic stuff. But again, it all comes down to your goals. What are you looking to accomplish? What are you looking to achieve? What are you looking for? Now, if it's just for everyday general use and your own photography, your enjoyment of the hobby, don't go spend $5,000. Unless if you're a rich dude and that's what you want, have at it. I'm not going to stop you. But there's certainly things that you have to take a lot of them into consideration. If you're going to go buy that $5,000 mount and that's what you long for, please don't break the bank. It's just a hobby. You got to remember that. Don't go broke for it. And if it's something that you want, save up, go get it. But in the meantime, there's certainly other lower quality mounts that one can purchase and afford to learn the ropes, to understand the headaches. Because believe me, once you get to that nice expensive mount, they nearly disappear. But I'm sure others will attest that just because it's expensive, not all problems go away.
I want to say two things. One is the name of Warren Keller's presentation at Nightfall a couple of years back was it's not the plane, it's the pilot. And that's true in an awful lot of cases. I mean, Tony Hallis is and Jerry Rodriguez can do much better with the typical DSLR than I've ever done with a big CCD camera. The other thing that now that I've actually given this talk, the one thing that I wanted to say that I just never forgot to say it and all that was use what you have. Don't keep sitting there saying, I need to buy something else, or I'll get started once I've bought so-and-so. Use what you have. Yes, do that and use it to the max. Figure out what the limitations are. If you have an alt-as mount, you can still take astro images, okay? But you're going to be limited to 15 seconds before the field rotation shows up, or 30 seconds, depending on focal length and stuff like that and location of the image. But go ahead and take your pictures. Join the crowd. Have fun. Take your pictures. And if you're the kind of guy or girl who can roll with it and adjust to it and put up with baloney and stuff that other imagers would not put up with, go for it. One of the reasons we spend the money is that convenience thing. We just know it's going to work because we spent more money on it, and dang it, it better work, and it does work. That's why we did it. But if you don't have that particular need, fine. Every month out at GMARS, we've got people showing up with, they didn't spend $5,000, but they're taking wonderful pictures and they're showing them to their family and their friends and even putting them on cloudy nights and every place else. And they're doing a good job and they're getting it. When I said, who are you taking pictures for? APOD or, your buddies or the guys at work? Nearly everybody answers that question that they're taking them for themselves. So go ahead and take your pictures for yourself.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the most valuable things that you can do is head out to a star party and speak to the people that are using the different pieces of gear, because you will receive a million different opinions about it. Now, of course, opinions are subjective. They're not objective typically, but it's just great to go out to talk to people to get a better understanding of the ins and outs of the different mounts. Like as I stated previously, you can have the most expensive telescope, the most expensive mount, the most expensive CCD, the most sophisticated software, and you may have been just better off with the DSLR sitting on top of an Ioptron SkyTracker Pro with a Manfrotto or a Gitzo mount, and that would have been more than enough. But get out there, talk to the people, understand what it is, get a better idea of what regrets they may hold with the purchases they have made, and how would they do things differently. There's certainly, I regret purchasing the CGM DX. I regret purchasing the Edge HD 1100. I wish I would have gone with a much simpler route just to get myself familiar with it before spending the incredible amount of money that I did later on down the road. But again, all goals, goals, goals. What are you looking to do?
Burton Briggs points out over in the chat room, for those of you who aren't there for some reason, frequently the newbie doesn't know what he wants to do, but over time their goals become more clear, and as a result their equipment selection will change. And that's a good point, Burton.
That's an excellent point, because I started off doing planetary with my Edge HD. I really wanted to do solar system stuff, but living in the geographical region that I live, imaging at a scale of 0.2 arc seconds per pixel, yeah, it didn't exactly accomplish what I wanted. So that's why I ended up with an FSQ and a much larger, 50 millimeter square chip, and imaging at 3.5 to 5.5 arc seconds per pixel, because where that is no longer a huge issue. So that's a great point.
And I just wanted to add to Burton. Hey, Burton, I'll see you in a couple months. I'm coming up by your house. Burton lives about an hour below the Eclipse Center line. So I'm going to be up in Idaho. See you then, Burton. Anyway, where are we?
I didn't see any other questions or anything like that up there, Alex. I think
Tolga, are you around? Tolga's not a...
I think he dropped off.
You know if he did he leave us any information about the speaker next week?
He didn't.
Oh, darn. Okay. Well, I guess that's it for the evening then, huh?
Yeah, I think we're done.
We always need presenters. We've been relying on ourselves for a while lately, and we really could use some outside. If you've got some rigs you'd like to show off, if you've seen some interesting techniques that you'd like to show off, please get a hold of us. Send it to Adam, and he can schedule you up. You don't have to be particularly bright to do these things or particularly gifted as a presenter, as I just showed you.
Get one.
You just have to be willing to share and get onto the internet here and tell people what you got. Okay, so please do.
Thanks, Alex.
So it sounds like Mary Lou West is actually in the chat, and she said she'll be the speaker next week. So
okay, cool. Because that's what I was hoping Tolga would confirm for. So Mary Lou, can you type in real quick? Type it in. What are you talking about?
she said speaker next week on science at NEAF.
Okay, cool. So I knew that was planned and everything else, but we hadn't got the last minute confirmation. So we're going to be talking about science at NEAF. And see how it works? See, we just get people volunteer to do this. And you can volunteer too. Where's my camera? We want you to volunteer.
It's nerve-wracking at first, but it's
take us offline before I get weirder.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.